check if you're live now. Yes, so live.
Fantastic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eugenia Oliverzi, and I'm an international pleasure and intimacy coach. And I'm super passionate about creating more love, more pleasure, and more intimacy in the world. And hence why I have created this video podcast called Pleasure Conversations, where I invite experts on pleasure, love, intimacy, relationships, sexual health, emotional health, and so much more. Experts from around the world who have been in the industry for a while, who have been walking their walk, who've been talking their talk and helping people overcome challenges that are actually very rarely are talked about in open. So I'm really, really happy to have Rafael Martinez here with me today. And he's one of the most incredible humans that is been in the space of pleasure and intimacy for over 13 years now. And today he's going to be sharing his absolute heart with us. And I'm super excited to see where this conversation is going to lead us. But before that, Rafael, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to start off by saying thank you for inviting me over. I love the work that you're doing. The conversations we've had really inspired me and touched me deeply as well. My name is Rafael Martinez. I was originally born in Colombia and I was raised in New York City. So that's kind of giving me a very volatile look on life and how people interact and what happens. And at some point after my marriage, after my divorce, I realized that like I just had no clue. I had no clue. Like I kind of had a sense of what relationships were supposed to be like, but I definitely didn't know all of the extra stuff around how sex and pleasure and desire or even purpose fit into relationships. And so that's when my journey began. And like you said, that's been 13 years since I've been at it, and then it's been over 9 years since I've been coaching, and somewhere in there I'm also an artist. And so all of these things kind of come together into a lifestyle of being fully present and expressing. And I like what you said about like uh, walking the talk. You know, that's one of the things that I love about this particular path, about like life coaching and living this way, that like it's just like the best part of it is that I get to live the stuff that I'm teaching and that I'm helping people with, and then I get to see them live it, and like really have it be a part of their lives. And so I'm excited about today's talk because of it.
Yes, so am I. So am I. And we've been talking a lot about alchemizing the emotions and yeah, walking the walk, talking the talk, and like really seeing how things can be changed and created and alchemized. And I actually, I actually love to ask my guests about their journey and like have you like dreamt to be a coach when you were a kid, or like what brought you like working in this field, and like how did that happen?
Yeah, I definitely was not. I did not see it going this way. I thought I was going to be an architect. I definitely been an artist since I was little, but all of the stuff around alchemy was not even on the radar. I think to some degree, even nowadays, like there's not much awareness around that. Like this idea that as a human being, your job could be helping other human beings outside of like the medical field. Like that. There's a whole range of extra stuff out there. And so I didn't see it coming. I certainly did not think I would end up here. But like once I started doing coaching, I looked back and I could see all these different points in my life where these different hints, different little things that were like moments where I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's a different thing going on here that I really I'm affected by, or that happens in my life. Like, for example, I would have people constantly coming to me asking me like, oh, what do I do with this? And what happens there? And one of the things that would often happen is I would listen, And then there would be a moment when I would hear, like I would ask him a question, or I would offer a perspective and say, it's like, well, it sounds like this is going on, da da da. And I'd put it in such a way that they would go, oh, hadn't thought of it that way. Or like, oh, thank you. That makes sense. Or like, wow, yeah, totally. And then this other part of them would come out that suddenly they kind of like they knew, like that deeper part of them that knew. And so that to me is really what coaching is about, just being an extra pair of eyes in somebody's life and helping them see, ask the right questions so that their deeper knowledge, their deeper knowing comes out, more of them comes out. It's not me telling them who to be, it's more of who they really are coming out. And I think that's the beauty. That's the beauty of the whole process. So
Mm. Yeah, this is so actually true. And I can so relate about like having those, um, attributes of a coach, like from like very long ago. Me myself, I have explored, and I could never like put my finger on it, but I was always like really involved in sexuality, and I could like I used to work in a strip club, right? Like since like age of 18, and
mm,
I could like get this thing like what men want,
mm,
like very soon. It's like, do you like to be punished, or do you like to be rewarded, or like all of this like kind of kinky naughty games. It's like I could like sense it out like right away, could like see the psychology behind it, but I never had the language to how to explain that. Like, yeah, so that was really interesting. And for sure, like I remember myself thinking one time I was like working in the club, walking past and thinking, one day these skills, what I'm like doing here, gonna serve many people. And that was so weird. I just remember this moment, like walking and like touching the wall, and it's like this what I'm living right now is going to serve me and people around me. And I didn't know until I did now,
yeah.
like really. And it's crazy. So yeah, what are you saying about seeing people to really like opening up and becoming more of who they are? It's such a beautiful thing, such a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
tell
I was
me,
going to say, I'm
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, but I was going to say one of the things that when we had a conversation leading up to this, one of the things that like really came up for me was this idea that like this thing that like all of us want intimacy, connection, and sex, but there's an extra layer of it, of like how it changes us, how the experience like affects us. And I think most of us have little moments when we're having an experience and we can feel we're being changed by it, we feel the importance of it, we feel that moment of like, wow, this is important, this is going to come into play later on, this is a big part of it. But what's interesting is I think most of us in relationships and in sex assume that that's what relationships are supposed to do, and only in relationships. But the truth is like those kind of experiences that change us and move us are actually part of who we are, and what's available in our sexual energy, in our connection, and what's going on. That's where the growth can be as people. And I think most of us just don't know what we are actually capable of doing through our relationships and our sex that help all these other things, and moments like that are the moments where like I know I have been changed and I've seen other people be changed by it.
Oh my God, this is so true. And like, even like, I work with men and women, and I can see how men respond to sex, like putting it as something like unattainable, something like on a pedestal. And I
Mhm.
can see how women respond to sex, and like, after, having a sexual encounter with a guy, for example, like being so emotional and like wanting to be held, but actually like waiting for the phone call and he never calls, or like things like that. What would you say, what is like behind all of that, and how to alchemize this, because like there is so much pressure, like sex is like on one side is so glorified that it's like, oh, this like this thing, and on the other hand is like, but this thing, you're not supposed to be doing this, and like, so it's like a really big conflict of emotions, and I think a lot of people are struggling with like how to behave,
Right.
before sex, after sex. There's so much shame, there is so much guilt, feelings of unworthiness, like how to navigate that all.
You know, it's funny when you start to mention that. It's just there's so much programming, and it's based on like your experiences and your culture and where you are in your life. You know, all of this stuff gets really tangled up. I usually where I start with most people, and certainly for myself, where I start with is slowing down. You know, being willing to slow down, take a breath, and then begin with the most important connection, the most important relationship, which is the relationship with myself. You know, one of the things that I have clients begin to practice right away, the moment they start working with me, is slowing down. What do you feel? And what do you feel on the level of abstraction of just sensations, not emotions, not interpretations of emotions, but literally, am I feeling pressure in my body? Am I feeling heat, cold? What is actually going on? And what usually starts to happen is that most of us begin, as we gain that awareness, we begin to distinguish between the different motivations of what's driving us. We begin to distinguish between fear and desire. You know, like people say, well, am I falling into a pattern with this person? Should I call them? Should I not? The moment you start to feel what's actually happening underneath, you start to understand where your desires are driving you. And then you can negotiate. Then you can find the develop the skills of communication and negotiation and all of that stuff. But knowing exactly how you feel has to be where you start from. Otherwise, it's all theoretical. You know, and sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't. But when you're feeling what's going on inside you, as you begin to learn how to have that, it becomes a lot steadier and truer and specific to you, which I think is where the beauty of the journey is like, I think a lot of times we read a lot of stuff and like, oh, you should be this kind of a man. Like I have a client who has been saying, you should, as a man, you should be assertive. You know, you should be assertive and you should take the lead and you should do this. And the thing is that like when you're actually willing to feel, as a man, you can learn when the moment to be assertive is and when not. You can feel it when that moment is, as opposed to have like 50 different scenarios where you check a chart as like, is this the moment, is that the moment? No, you actually feel it and you know, and that's where you learn from. And so that's, I think, one of the pivotal skills that we all need to learn, slowing down and feeling.
Mm. Oh my God, I've got so much to say about this. It's great. Because, like, well, first of all, I know, like, that so many people are not exposed to their feelings and emotions, and like, they have no idea how they feel. Like, I remember with one of my ex partners in the past, we did this game. So it was like, okay, you name me all the emotions that are available to you. And he named to me about nine in like 2 or 3 minutes. So, in a space of exactly the same time, or maybe even shorter, I've named to him like 24, like over a double, you
Uh-huh.
know? Um, it's like just an example of like how men and women like really operate in a different kind of emotional spectrum, not like uh, for women there is so much more going on, and for men it's like, what is she talking about? I don't understand her. Like this kind of thing. It's like, she talks about unicorns and butterflies, I don't see it, what is here? you know
Yeah,
like.
absolutely. That's one of the things that I love. Like you said, working with couples is amazing because my favorite part has always been, like you said, that moment where you help the man understand what he's seeing,
Mm.
like actually help him understand and see like, oh, that's going on, or that's what's going on. And when he feels it, he understands why she's doing, like the undercurrents of the feeling. And then for women, I love that moment where I get to show her how much she actually cares,
Mm.
how much she actually wants to show up for her and give her the things that she wants, and have those experiences with her. And there's always this beautiful moment where they see each other,
Mm.
that where he gets it and she gets it, and they're like, oh, there it is. And it's in that beautiful moment of connection where it's like, now you're ready to begin to have all of these experiences that will change both of you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like also like what he was talking about, like the conditioning that man has to be assertive, man has to be the lead, I think is so deeply ingrained in us
Mm,
that women become very passive in terms of like actually standing up for what they want
mm-hmm,
and actually acknowledging what they want. Because I can see some, and I was one of those women myself in the past, where it's like, oh, but I just gonna wait for his text message. I just gonna, and and I see lots, like not anymore for a long time, but it's like, but it was my reality. Because, and even now I see so much dating advice that actually has this strategy
right,
that actually, uh, to be a desirable woman, you just have to be very passive, and like all of these kind of things. And I never can see this work because it just goes so against to actually what happens inside of you, your desires, your self-expression. And it's like, and creates so much confusion. So it's like, hey, so I really want to like message him and see how he's doing, but this dating advice, damn it, says that, don't you dare, because otherwise you're not a desirable woman,
right.
you
Right,
know
absolutely. Like that's what I mean. I think there's a lot of stuff where it's very static, like these static rules. And I think there are moments when sitting back and letting your desire come out becomes kind of part of the play, part of the polarity between men and women, masculine and feminine. Um, but it's a static thing to say, just do this. It's like you have to feel it. You have to feel it. Is this the moment where I give us space so that we can yearn for each other? Or is this the moment where I let my desire out and ask for the thing, And that it's not something you can have a chart for, or a formula for. It has to be a thing you feel, and that you're learning to navigate and be in it. Like you're gonna make a lot of mistakes, but you're gonna have fun doing it. And that's really what feeds a relationship, is that vibrancy, that I'm letting myself feel, and that feeling feeds the connection.
mm. So how would you say someone can feel their desire? Like, some people would be probably is like, well, I want things, and it's like, how would one feel their desire and
I
hear
think
it?
that Yeah, I think the beginning part is to slow down and feel, and have a practice of feeling. So have a daily practice of like, every morning I wake up and I spend 10 minutes in my bed. After I wake up, I set a timer so that I'm not, getting shy and not doing it enough, or I'm going too far and it takes over my day. Like having a set time where you begin like, what am I feeling in my body? Breathing, slowing down. What are the sensations? Do I feel things moving around? Do I feel electricity or buzzing? And beginning from that place, like having that as a regular practice in the beginning, and then adding a practice of listing desires. Every day I have a couple of clients who I specifically gave them the homework of, every day send me 10 desires that you have. And it could be something as small as like, I want a cup of coffee, all the way to like, I want to change the world with such and such a company, like letting yourself list all of them. And what happens is that at some point we all begin to feel what the desire feels like in our body for us. And the more we practice doing those two things, the more we start to recognize it. And the brain is particularly designed to recognize patterns. So if you start to develop a pattern in your life of bringing up desire and acknowledging and connecting to it, the brain gets better and better at it. And so
Mm.
you definitely reach a certain point where not only are you feeling desires on a regular basis, but you can follow desire in a situation. So if you're relating to someone, if you're in a relationship with someone, if you're dating someone, or if you're having sex with someone, you'll feel that thread like, oh, there it goes. We're going this way. We're doing this. We're doing that. And that's where that vibrancy comes in. And it's based on those practices, beginning with that relationship.
So beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Like talking about desires, it's like one of my most favorite topics in the whole world. And I love talking about sexual desires. So let's touch on like a bit
Yeah, absolutely.
because I can see that there is like a lot of taboo, about like people wanting to spend time with each other. They want to like maybe try something new with each other, but I can see a lot of people are so shy. It's like, oh, I can't possibly say that. I can't possibly do that. It's like, so how to go about it when you have all of those desires like bubbling up in you and you like fully aware? It's like, shit, I just want to like jump on this person. Like, how do I actually come about it? Like, what would you say?
Well, I think one of the things it's beginning to practice asking for what you want, and beginning to practice it in a small way. Like one of the things that I ask clients and invite them to do is practice every day asking for one desire. So it might be like you're standing at the coffee line and asking for exactly what you want. Like I want the coffee this way and that way, and I want you to do this, please. Like, putting that desire out there. And what most of us start to notice is that we begin to get a sense of how to do that, right? And so that combined with feeling your desires, you start to have a lot of moments with like what you described is like, oh my God, I can't believe I have that desire, like can't believe that's going on there. And then you get to practice asking for it. You know, Acknowledging desire to me is different than asking for the desire. And I think sometimes we get that crossed in our society. We think that if somebody names their desire, we either have to give it to them or we have to say no. But the truth is like the more you practice feeling and acknowledging your desire and then asking for it, the more you practice that muscle of navigating that and actually saying the thing in the moment. Like being in the middle of having sex and being with someone, and then suddenly you feel this flush and you're like, oh my God, a desire just came up. Or one of the things for men, and this is one of the ones that is very challenging, but that can get to be a lot of fun, is we can always tell the moment when the sensation has been going up, like things are electric and going on, and then suddenly it all drops off.
Mm.
And we're like, wait, what just happened? But as men, we're taught figure it out, right? So most of the time, most of us as men will sit there and like, oh, something just happened. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. Did that work? Did this work? And we start trying a bunch of stuff, but we're not connecting with her. We're not asking her. We're not willing to say, it's like, hey, did something just come up? Did something just happen? And slowing down to reconnect and to see what's going on in there. And that's one of the things that like it's hard for a lot of men to do, because we think it's like, if I don't know what's going on, I'm doing something wrong. And she's going to think that I don't know how to be a lover. She's going to think I don't know how to do this. And she's going to start thinking that maybe she should stop or not ask me to do it again. So we'd rather try to fix it than
Mm.
actually slow down and ask. It's like, hey, did something just change there?
Mm. Oh my God, this is like such a great example because, like, there, like in my personal life, that there have been so many moments that that there is like this all juicy intimacy, we saw into each other, and then in one moment something just happens and it just goes, and like what just happened, it's
Right.
like over the sudden, like I would notice that my lover is like in his head, and it's like,
Right.
hey, What about me?
Right. And that's the thing, is like usually what happens, my experience for myself and with clients has usually been that usually what happens is both people are going along having an experience, and then a desire comes up, either for the man or for the woman. It comes up, it creates something, and then either she starts thinking about that desire or he starts thinking about that desire, but there's a slight moment of disconnection, and suddenly both of us are going off on our own thing.
Mm,
Right. And that's why practicing that muscle of slowing down and feeling is so important, because that's the moment you catch yourself like, oh, I was thinking about this, something's changed, let me slow down and feel, and come back and feel what's actually happening. And in that moment of reconnection, you can ask the question of like, what just changed? What's the new desire here?
mm,
And that's
right.
when suddenly it gets so vulnerable and so electric and so amazing, because it's like, that's the actual thing.
Yeah, yeah, because it's like lots of people they say, "Oh, but what if I'm gonna kill the moment?" And I'm like, "Honey, it's like if the disconnection happened, like what moment are you talking about there?
Right. It's like,
You only have chances to regain the moments here, and
right.
like actually what I like to do in those situations, like you're saying, is like to slow down and take like a few breaths together, like to sink in our limbic system again, so that it just keeps going, that the intimacy is still there, that we are present with each other. Sometimes I find even conversation is not necessary. Sometimes it is, but it's like you can totally gauge, like when you become present with your partner, you just totally know what is happening. And
Right.
actually what I'm finding, like last weekend I've been at one of the temple nights, and what became super like highlighted to me is the importance of being present, like being a feminine, and it's like being in my feminine. um, I really crave that presence. So when I see like my partner is disconnecting, I'm like, what's going on here? Something is not quite right. So what would you say? How um, men and women can navigate those things? Because like what have became apparent to me that men want to give women what they want, but then in some cases they don't have a capacity for that, and in some cases they're very ashamed to admit that, and women in the same time are like, hey, what happened? Everything was going great, and then it's like in one moment something changed and I don't understand, and you became distracted, and like all of these kind of things. So how would you say people can navigate these kind of situations?
Well, I think this comes back to the original topic of what you were saying about like this idea of alchemizing your emotions. I think those are the moments where the gold really is, like when you slow down in that moment, and it'll probably involve some talking, in the sense that you'll have to acknowledge certain things. But I think especially in the beginning, it's so important to be willing to feel what actually happened with yourself. So that level of honesty, like it begins to bring up all these things to alchemize. Because I've had situations where I'm with a lover, I'm with someone, and suddenly this fear of not being good enough comes up.
Mm,
And being able to be honest with myself in that moment of like, wait, what just happened? Like slowing down is like, oh, I got afraid. I got afraid that like I've had this situation happen before where something happened with her and I could see something happened, but in that moment I got afraid that I wasn't going to be able to deliver that. And in that moment of being afraid, I pulled back a little, and now I see her reacting to that, and now I'm even more afraid because I'm like, oh shit, I'm fucking it up. And now she's having her own experience and I'm fucked up over here. And then I lose my heart on, and then it's like, ugh, that's it, it's all fucked up now, right? And it's like it, but in that moment, the vulnerability of being able to slow down and breathe and say, hey, could we slow down for a second here?
Mm.
I had a moment where I noticed something happened, and then I spun out a little bit about it. What was going on with you? What did that feel like? Right? Like that moment of being vulnerable and willing to acknowledge what actually happened with me brings us back into reconnection. And the alchemy then for me begins there in the sense that, like, okay, you've had an experience, you're in that moment of intimacy, and then afterwards in your practices you get to unpack all that stuff. You know, afterwards, when you're sitting meditating, where you're doing your writing exercises, when you're doing all these other things, you get to feel that place of like, oh, it's interesting when I'm face to face with that level of desire, how do I respond? And look at what happened. And then I write about it. I speak to my coach about it. You know, like, I also have a group of men that I have conversations with. They're part of my support system, and I can have the conversation there, so that when I come back to relating with this woman the next time, now I'm aware when that feeling comes up, I'm like, oh, there it is again. But now I'm present. I'm not getting knocked back. Instead, I can show up and
Mm.
feel the vulnerability of that moment and stay connected. And I think that is where the alchemy is that that's where the, you know, like sometimes people talk about the work. That
Mm.
to me is where the work is. And because it's very much around sex and kundalini energy and all of that, it tends to be a lot more pleasurable. You know, because it's in that vulnerable moment where suddenly both of you see each other and like, oh my god, here's somebody who's willing to connect and who's willing to do this stuff. Yes, I want more of that. Yes, I want more of them, you know.
Sure. And like being so courageous to actually honor and own your like moments, your fuck ups, you know, your vulnerability, your not good enoughness and fears and all of that. I think it takes a lot of courage.
It
Like
does.
especially since like we're all so busy to look good and avoid looking bad and like I'm like,
Yeah.
honey, I'm just like a great lover here, what you talking about, you know? But it's like, but I guess, not I guess, in fact I know for sure when those moments of disconnections happen, you know, like that there is like a lot for women is coming up. It's like, oh, it's like, am I not sexy enough?
Right, it's on both sides.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like, and like everyone is like going through their things, and it's like, oh, what is going on here, you know? And the connection is losing. And before, in my own life, I was very scared to address that. And it was like just continue as it should be, where nobody actually gets what they want.
Right.
And it's like, what just happened? What was the
Listen,
point of this all?
right. And I gotta tell you, one of the things that always blows most men mind is that a lot of the time the reason we lose our heart on is because there's a disconnection, not because there's something wrong with you. And so one of the things that I've learned is that if I'm in a situation with a woman and we're beginning to like get into a sexual situation and I'm having a hard time getting a hard on, maybe it's because we're not fully connected. But we all get into those stories, right? Like the woman starts to think like, am I not sexy enough? Does he not like me? Or is he putting his sexual energy somewhere else? Like all of these stories happen on her side, right? And on his side, there's all the stories of like, shit, I can't do it. Is something wrong with me? Or what's happening? Do I need to take a pill? Like all of these things, we're spinning out on the fears instead of slowing down to actually feel what's happening. That maybe your body is trying to tell you something. Maybe your body's trying to tell you, slow down so we can actually feel the sexual energy. Or maybe there's something that needs to be said before the sexual energy fully opens up. You know, like that, it's actually a good indicator that, you know, it's time to slow down. It's time to connect in a different way. And it's a hard one to admit, you know?
Mm. Right, because it's like, come on.
Right. Like there's this whole thing in society that says a man should be hard anytime, that anytime a woman shows any sexual interest, a man should be hard like that. And it's not true. You know, it's just not true. Like the connection has to be there and then the body responds.
Right. And in the same time, that there is so much shame around men having a hard on.
Yeah. Right. It's like
Like,
we have this thing where like our masculinity is directly, our value is directly tied to our sexual prowess. You know, like the main three things that most men, in my opinion, usually get judged by is how much money you make, how much of an alpha male you are, and what your sexual prowess is. Like if you have those three things, you're a desirable man. If you, and what happens is most of us as men, if one of those gets threatened, we freak out. We're like,
mhm,
we freak out and we think our value is being questioned, and so slowing down to feel becomes one of the things that help us undo that programming so that we can trust our bodies and trust what we're feeling and then trust that to guide us back to connection.
oh my God, it's so good. So good. Because, like, seriously, when in my experience, I see men who are like threatened in one of those three aspects, they completely want to retract.
Right.
It's like, I'm not ready for any kind of connection. I need time on myself. I've been dating a guy, and like during the COVID, he just lost everything. So he could not face me.
Yeah.
It's like his entire masculinity was like just like wiped out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I've seen a few men go through that particular one. I've had a couple of women clients that have had that particular thing. It's a hard skill. You know, we're not really taught how to stay connected and open in those very vulnerable places. One of the biggest pitfalls that we as men have is that we get hurt and we withdraw into our man cave. And that's also part of why I recommend to all of my male clients to have a support system of men so that when you withdraw, you're not completely withdrawing from the world. You can go to your men and say, dude, I'm fucked up. I'm
Mm,
fucked up. I was with this hot woman yesterday and I couldn't get it up and I'm not sure what's happening. Right. And then have another man be willing to like feel with you and talk with you and find out what's going on and get you back to who you are, and then that way you can come back to her and say it's like, hey, listen, you know, would you like to go on another date? I've been under a lot of pressure and I was a little distracted yesterday. Would you like to have another try at this? Would you like to go out with me again? You know, and
mm,
that moment of that vulnerability of admitting is like, oh, there it is, and look, he's showing up, you know.
right, right. And how would you say women can support men in those areas where like men wants to go into the man cave? Because like women usually think it's like, what happened? It's like, is he ghosting me? It's like, what is going on here? It's like that there is usually no real explanation. So what
Right.
would you say, yeah, how women can support men in these areas?
Well, there's two things. The first one is, you know, don't take it personally. It's not about you. Like, as much as it might seem like you said this thing to him and then he got hurt and withdrew, it's not about you. It's his reaction to that experience and whatever else it triggers. You just happen to be an agent of that invitation for change in him.
Mm,
You're showing up in a way that is inviting him to change and grow so that he can show up more as a man. So it's not really about you. It's not personal. That's the first thing. The second thing is slow down and actually feel what is happening underneath. You know, because a lot of the times, like women will get upset and they're like, oh, did I do this? Do I do that? Or like, or is he ghosting me? Like all of that stuff. But when you feel underneath, you'll be able to feel like, oh no, we connected in a very intimate spot and he pulled away. That's not a bad thing. It just means there's a split, there's a space for him to grow into. It doesn't mean that a bad thing happened. It doesn't mean that I messed it up. It just means we touched a very intimate spot and now we both get to grow so that we can connect again and again.
mm, so beautiful.
Yeah.
And whether that growth and connection again and again happens or not, that's already like
Right.
another story.
Right,
Yes.
that's a different story. That has to do more with like your commitment and what you both want, and if you want to go together down that path. If at that point you make an invitation and he says no, then great. You can let him go and say, okay, he is a no to moving forward here, and how do I take care of myself? How do I move forward in my life? As opposed to trying to like go in there and grab him out because, oh, I like him, or he's a good man, or he'll be better off once he gets over this challenge. It's like, no, no, give him a chance to show up. If that means you move on and then he regrets it and comes back 3 months later because he learned his lesson, it'll be worth it in the long run. Give him a chance to fully show up as a man.
Mm, so good, so good. You know, my friend sent me uh, this picture of lion and lioness, where
Oh yeah.
you know the picture
I
where it's
think so.
where the lioness on heat wants like sex 20 to 40 times a day, and like lion, poor lion, is like walks away with like face sad, and the lioness just like runs after him and bites him for his like for
From
his
his testicle.
bullets, yeah, for his
By the
testicles.
ball. Yeah. It's
Yes,
beautiful. Yeah.
ladies, don't do that.
Well, here's the thing. It's interesting, right? Because there's a certain level of desire in there and dynamic, but it's like that's the vulnerable moment that most men avoid. We avoid that like the plague, like that moment of like, God, I don't want to get caught out there where she wants more than I want and I'm dying, right? Like the actual thing there is like being willing to feel like, okay, she's in this place, she's doing this thing, she's going through it, and being willing to say, is like, honey, like, I want you to have everything that you want, and I need a moment's rest. All right,
Mm,
this, what can I do instead? What
mm,
can we do instead to like stay connected and stay in there, as opposed to I need to run away from her?
mm, mm. This is like so incredible because like what occurs to me that the like from conversation with you and from everything that you're saying, that underneath all of those insecurities, those potential lying, pretending to like look good and get your shit together, it's like underneath all that is pure honesty
Yeah.
about where you are in life, about your desires, about your insecurities, about the disconnection, about the connection. It's like all of that, like as long as you're honest with yourself, as long as you're honest with your lover, your partner, your friends, your family, whoever that could be, your life is really like is only can be more and more beautiful with each day, because once you know it what your needs are, as long as you're honest with yourself, you can give it to yourself, you can ask others to give to you what you really want and need.
Hmm. And it's amazing because once you start to do that, it feels so much better. You don't have to like carry this pretense of who you're supposed to be, like that weight of it. That's what actually tires a lot of men and a lot of women, is like we have all of these things that we're carrying along, and then we're like, oh, it's so tiring, it's so much work. And it's like, well, it's so much work because you're trying to maintain all these different things about you that you think should be. But if you let go all of those and are willing to be honest, then it's like it's a hell of a lot more vulnerable, but it feels so much better. The
Yeah,
weight is off, and then the pleasure is on and connectable. It's like, oh, that feels really good. And when you actually have the connection with someone who is that open, then it's like it's beautiful and it's nourishing. You don't have to work as hard for it.
yeah. Oh my god, this is so juicy, I love it. And I actually have an example of like one of my clients that I worked with, and it's like there was a lot of maintenance of like this pretentiousness of like but like maintaining that, and it's like, oh, I can't possibly be that, or it's like I can't possibly be that. And and there was a lot of resentment of connection. It's like once and it comes to the simple things. It's like, let's say you sit on a sofa and you just want to watch TV and you don't want to do anything else. But then it's like constantly lying to yourself, oh, I'll do this in a minute. Oh, but it's like I just, and you just like keep pulling it off, keep pulling it off, keep pulling it off, when actually you have no fucking intention to do anything. And it's like, why don't you just be honest with yourself? Well, I just want to watch TV and do nothing. Like, and for many people, what do you mean I can do that? It's like, yeah, you really can do that. Like, just be honest with yourself that you don't want to do anything. But isn't that lazy? Well, is it lazy or not? If you don't want to do anything, you just don't want to do anything.
Right.
That
And that's, I think it's such an incredible thing to practice, you know, like practicing being honest, because once you start practicing it there with yourself, then you can start practicing it with your partner. You know, like I've had a lot of situations where male clients come to me and they're like, we work through what's going on in the relationship, and we come to realize that there's moments when she wants to have sex but he doesn't, but he doesn't know how to say no to her because he can tell there's something else going on. You know, that moment where like you're both accustomed to having sex because you're supposed to, or because there's other pressure and feelings going on, and you kind of want to have sex to like feel better, you know. And there's these moments where I've seen men, it's like, actually, like I could tell my body was a no to having sex because there was a deeper conversation to be had. And that's the moment where like when we're honest with ourselves, we can be in that moment and be honest. It's like, man, sex is not the thing right now. There's something else going on. And being
yeah.
willing to say to her is like, hey, hold on, what's actually going on? And that's when she goes like, oh my God, this guy, like that's when the trust is built, because now she can trust that he is willing to do the right thing. He's willing to do the hard work to penetrate her, not just physically, but emotionally. And that's when it's like, oh, here's the man that I want. He penetrates me on multiple levels.
Right. And oh my gosh, this is so beautiful that you have mentioned that, because I actually had like such a clear like observation of that like during last weekend's temple night, where it's like where it's like sexy people everywhere, like everywhere you look that there are sexy people.
Hmm.
But it's like, and it's so easy to get carried away. It's like, oh, but I'm in this environment and this is just like available to me, and I'm talking on my own behalf and on behalf of like men, because I had a lot of conversations. It's like this is a like prime place for me to learn about myself, to learn about sexuality, to learn about our human responses, that like you see all of that and it's like available to you, and it's just you just have to reach out. And like immediate our human response is like, well, but I have to want it, I have to just go and do it, I'm here already, I just like have to go and have sex. But
Right.
actually this is where like lots of us forgetting to check in. It's like, hey, but like my mind says you have to go and do it, like have to, again, like there is a pressure to it. But
I'm
actually,
supposed to want it right now.
yeah, like right, it's like, but what actually my body says? Am I actually available for sex right now? Am
Right.
I actually available to like encounter with another human being and allow them in my body, or like being with my naked body? Is this actually what is true to me right now? And you're gonna feel the answer, you're gonna know the answer in yourself. And if
Right.
the answer is no, like anything else, you will be actually abandoning and betraying yourself.
Well, yeah, you'll also be reinforcing these patterns in your body. So like if you have a pattern of abandoning yourself in that moment, then what happens is that there's a certain level of disconnection that you have from the sensations you're feeling. And so you're actually reinforcing this disconnection from your pleasure, from your ability to love. And so in that moment, if you do the opposite, if you're willing to slow down and say no, you begin to close that gap and feel more pleasure and more love because you're willing to follow that.
Mm,
You
mm,
know, and it's such an interesting thing that like I've seen it happen and I've experienced it happen so many times with myself and with lovers, that like it's in that moment of being willing to acknowledge, oh, I'm actually a no right now,
Mm,
Acknowledging that and feeling that and being with that usually opens the door to whatever the next right thing actually is. And
mm,
sometimes the next right thing is sex, but
mm,
it's not until you're willing to feel the no that the yes can come up, you
mm.
know?
Oh, this is so good. So actually, I would love to touch on like saying no because it's such a big thing for so many people. How do you even say no? Like, come on, but what is he gonna think about me? But what is she gonna think about me? Like all of this, like, but
Right.
he gonna
Oh,
get upset. She gonna get upset. She gonna think that I don't fancy her. It's
right.
like
Oh,
he gonna
that
think
place
that,
where, yeah, we get into that scarcity of like, well, I really want sex. I know I've been really hungry for it. If I say no now, I may not get it later on. Or like I have to get it because I'm hungry. I can't say no now. But that's the hard part. That's the part of learning to trust yourself that if I say no now, it will still be available down the line.
mm,
And
mm,
that's where the alchemy to me comes in. It's like as we practice saying no, we practice trusting the universe that if I say no now because it's the resonant thing, the resonant yes will still happen.
oh my gosh, but there's so much trust is involved, right?
It really is. It really
Yeah.
is. That's why it's an alchemy path, because it involves trust, it involves faith, it involves engaging all those voices of fear and doubt that will push you into doing it.
Mm. Yeah. So how, like for example, I work with people and quite a lot of them they have doubts, and they ask me, Eugenia, how can I trust? How can I learn to trust that everything is going to work out for me? So
I
what
mean,
would you say?
there's a practice called fear inventory. I don't know if you do it or not, but like
Yeah.
fear inventory is one of the cornerstones of when I work with clients because it gives you a chance to, on a neurological level, like you literally begin to retrain your brain to have a right relationship with fear. Fear is supposed to be a helper that helps you stay safe. It's not supposed to take over. And that's a lot of the times what happens. And so fear inventory is a place where we get to engage that fear in a safe container, get to know it so that when it shows up in our life, we can say, oh, thank you for the warning. And this is how I'm going to respond to the world. So instead of reacting, we begin to respond. So fear inventory is one of the cornerstones so that you get the right relationship there. But then at the same time, also begin to build the right relationship with desire so that when you're in that situation, you can tell the difference on a felt sense. You can tell the difference between this is the desire that moves me forward, and that is the doubt that's attempting to keep me safe.
Mm.
Because that's really what all fear and doubt is about. It's trying to keep us safe. It's just has to be repurposed for its right role.
It's like I love listening to you because like I'm connecting all of that like with my own experiences, my clients' experiences. And like this is again something that came up for me during the temple night is when I am acting from my desire, like that there is no delay, that there is like there like I just have to point my finger and it's like and I get what I want.
Yeah.
I just have to think about it and it's already here, like basically, when I'm truly aligned with myself and I'm truly, you know like acting from the place of desire. And I'm noticing when I start hesitating that this is what actually creates all of them, gray areas, that is like that there is uncertainty, that there is like the fears are starting to come up, the insecurities are starting to come up, so that there is like the opportunity again to have a look at myself. It's like, hey, but is this really what I want? Because I know when I want something, I just gonna go for it. That there is like, yeah, right, that there is nothing can stop me from having what I want. But
Yeah.
when I start hesitating, perhaps it's an indication that maybe it's not exactly what I want, or maybe it's not exactly the right moment, or
Right.
maybe this is not exactly the right situation, that it's like something, and I may think that this is what I want, but I feel this like, oh, and it's like, and like all of these lower emotions are coming up and like create this kind of turbulence inside of me that I'm like,
Right.
hmm,
Well, to me, it's funny that you bring that up because to me, that is the essence of the alchemy. You know,
yeah.
the alchemy of emotions is when we hit a moment like that. To me, that's when you go to the practices, because the practices are going to be the ones that help you clear the air, clear all the stuff, and get to what's actually happening underneath. And
Mm,
once you get to see what's happening underneath, then you can tell what the next right step is. And
mm.
that's the beauty of the alchemy. Like, that's how you know. It's like, oh, here's a moment.
Right, right. Oh, trust me, today has been a shadow work day for me.
That's fantastic. I love it.
All happening.
That's how it works, right? It's like the more we let ourselves in there, the more we get opportunities to do the shadow work and go in there and
Oh
feel amazing.
gosh, there is no hiding. There is like no hiding.
No,
Once you like aware, you can't be unaware anymore. You can't just like look
can't
another
turn
way.
the lights off anymore.
Yeah, right. It's like, no, actually, I see myself now, and it's like, oh, hey, you're here. I thought we already dealt with you. Apparently not. What's happening? Oh,
That's
I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh, Rafael, I can talk to you like for ages and ages and ages. It's such a juicy, enriching conversation.
mm,
And I also see that we're coming to an end of our pleasure conversation.
definitely.
So, I would love to for you to share how people can connect with you, how people can find out more about what you do, and maybe have a conversation with you.
Yeah. So the main way people can contact me is through my website. It's rafaelmartinezcoaching.com. That's the main place. There's also a place where they can send me an email. You can email me if you want directly at rafael.martinez coaching at gmail. Both of them lead to the same place, but if you want to be more direct about it, and we can have a conversation, we can talk about what it is that you want or where you want to go. More than anything, I love having the conversation with people of what do you want? Like,
Mm.
where are you now and where do you want to go? And can I help you there? And that's really where the whole journey starts.
So amazing, so amazing. And in fact, yeah, for sure, I think more people should actually start considering what do they want to have more of. Yeah,
Yep.
just like start thinking about that. What would you like more of?
Yeah.
And Rafael is here to help you, myself is here to help you. And if you don't resonate with us, that's fine. I'm sure that there are plenty of people who you will resonate with, but just like don't deny yourself in your pleasure, in your desires and wanting more from life than you currently have. It's
Right.
not greedy, I promise. You can have it all.
It's an invitation, it's an invitation to have an adventure. It's an invitation to have a full life, whether it's with us or someone else. That's where it begins.
So beautiful, so beautiful. Well, look, I feel that it's a beautiful space for us to complete this pleasure conversation for today. So
Mm.
I would love to thank everyone for watching, and I know that we had a very big audience today. So guys, thanks so much. If you like our conversation, please share it. Give us some likes, give us some love hearts. And yeah, we are here. Please feel free to connect with us. Both Rafael and myself are on a mission to create more love in the world, and we can do it one conversation at a time. So
Hmm.
don't be shy, and yeah, think more about what you would like to have more of. And this been a pleasure conversation with myself, Eugenia Oliverti, and Rafael Martinez.
Thank
Let's
you.
start
Thanks for
now.
having me. Ciao.
Bye.